Welcome to the Multifamily Zone, where business meets family. We explore what the entrepreneur life looks like from the family perspective. Now here are your hosts, Julia and Gino Barbaro.
Welcome, everyone, to the Multifamily Zone podcast. I'm Julia Barbaro, your host. I am here with the co-founder of Jake and Gino, my husband and co-host, Gino Barbaro.
Hey, Joel.
Hey.
How you doing?
I'm good. How are you doing?
I'm doing good.
Good. Today is a beautiful day out. The sun is out and it just brings me such happiness. You know what I mean? After a few days of rain,
You know what brings me happiness?
What's that?
Doing a podcast with my wife.
That is the right answer.
We haven't done one in a while. We've had a lot of guests, a lot of back-to-back.
That's right.
And I wanted to get back to coaching today and getting back and doing a deep dive and asking questions. And I want you to interview me. I'll interview you. And as we ask each other these questions, I want the listeners out there just to listen and to reflect upon their lives. Because really, it's all about growth. It's all about growing. You know, what I did when I was in my 20s, I'm horrified at some of the things that I did back then. But that's okay, because I had a lot of ways to go, right? I had room for improvement. You don't come out of the womb being perfect, right?
Are you saying you're perfect now? Is that what you're telling us?
Didn't say that. I'm trying for perfection. And that's what it really comes down to. If you're trying and being conscious and being aware, most of us aren't even conscious that we're being idiots, right? So reflect, spend the next 30 minutes listening to us, reflecting on where you are, where you want to go, and where you've come from. Mm-hmm. And it's okay if you've come from a bad place, because a lot of us have. We've done stupid things. It's okay. It doesn't make us stupid people. We should learn from those things. That's what makes us great. That's what can make us great in life, is by learning from those things and, continuing to improve.
Mm-hmm. Gino, when we first got married, and that's, many of us listening out there, when we first get married, it's just the two of us, just like it is on this podcast today, which I love, right?
So, Julia, yes. Now that you say that, I got energy right now. I was like dragging, man. My wife's like, woo! And I, the whole selfish thing is amazing. And that I'm glad you asked that. Let me just share a story with you that I was reading about someone in Hollywood. I'm not going to mention the author's, the name of the actor. And it was just sad. And yeah, I thought I sound as if it was somebody in their 20s, almost sounded like me in my 20s. And they're like, we don't want to have kids. We want to have a free and carefree life. And the fact that they don't have kids, that's fine. I get that. Not everyone's built for children, right? But the way they were talking, they were just like, I just want to get up and do whatever I want, whenever I want, have a great time, kumbaya. And I'm thinking they are so selfish and so into themselves. And there's no servitude there. There's no go out there trying to help others, trying to make other people's lives better. And I'm going to tell you right now, that's one of the keys to life. That's one of the successes to life, is really going out there and enjoying and helping other people with their problems, with their lives. That's why I created Jake and Gino, to teach others that. And that's why I became a life coach. All those skills to help others, to be there and get on a phone call with somebody for an hour and let them talk to you. My wife has been doing this. She's been amazing the last year and a half, just to listen to other people, to go through their problems and talk to them and help them out. Being empathetic, being a sounding board is amazing. And then just hearing this person talk, I'm like, what a vapid, useless life form. To me, I'm sorry. You can have all the money in the world, but what kind of life is that when all you're doing is centered around yourself? There's no thought of God whatsoever. So these people are godless to begin with. And like I said, that's a choice. That's fine. I'm trying not to judge them. But just from that, I felt so sad for that person. I just really did. I'm like, wow, the essence of life, of trying to be with a community, be with a tribe, trying to help others. I mean, we all have these amazing gifts. Let's share these gifts, and let's not be so selfish and so focused on getting up in the morning. All I'm doing is hang out, smoke weed, and do whatever I want all day. I mean, when you're 39 years old, 40 years old, your midlife, that's what your goal is, to thinking all about yourself. And like I said, when you're in your 20s, it's one thing, but when you're getting to middle age, there's more to life than that. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
I'm not talking for the rest of the podcast. I promise.
No, I of course. I love when you tell.
It's just,
yes, I get it. I triggered something on you. I know that.
Yeah, that fired me up.
I know.
Right? Because that's not what we're all about. And, let's bring it back to ours. When we got married, I was that selfish person, but I was selfish for different reasons, right? I just wanted to create money, and I wanted to have, financial freedom, or I wanted the ability to not worry. I thought making money would make me worry less. Then you start having kids and it's like, wow, there are a lot of worries going on. There's a lot of new stuff. And it's not just me. I remember sitting in bed that one night after we had Gabriella, our first child. And I'm like, I'm never going to have another day to myself for the rest of my life. And I'm okay with that. And obviously that's not true, but really their thoughts and their problems come before ours. And that's what ends up happening as you become an adult and as you get, as you start growing in life. And it's not just me. It becomes us. And it's a journey having that first child to the second child, all the way up to the sixth child. It's been awesome for me. And I've been able to grow and I've been able to learn from my family how to build my business life, how to build my family life. And it's been an amazing journey for me. How has it been for you?
Yeah, it's been a super amazing adventure for sure. And I say adventure because you think of the greatest adventure movie and there's just like really difficult times and then there's just amazing times and it all morphs together in just a beautiful life. There's, like I said, there's been some really hard times. And one of them, well, our daughter, Gabby, how awesome she's 21, but she went off to camp for 6 weeks to serve as a missionary type in Georgia. And it's interesting when something changes at home, how we, the parents, react, because sometimes we just think it's just us reacting. We're going to miss her. And the other kids are, they're siblings, so they don't care as much. But maybe we do, but maybe we need to think about it more, is to take into consideration what they're going through during times that we struggle, because we forget that they're little people learning how to handle certain issues. And so this is the reason for this podcast, is because of her. And it's funny that you mentioned her as a baby, and now it's become, it's almost like her first step out in the world away from us. And it's super exciting as a mom. It's like, wow, we guided her through her life till now. And I'm just like in awe of her and what she's become. But it's a challenge at the same time because our kids are going through it as well. And it's hard to watch certain kids. They're like, what are we going to do without Gabby? That's what actually they've said that before. And I just like, holy cow, how are we dealing with this? All of us. And, I know a lot of you out there maybe have a child going away to college, and it is devastating for everyone because that person is around all the time and all of a sudden they're just missing. And so that's something that I realize it's not just about us as the parents and her, it's about the whole family unit at home. And the whole dynamics at home is different. It's actually a little bit quieter. The kids are like, all right, who's going to take us to singing? How are we going to do this? But if she's not there, we sing with her. So there's a lot of conversations that need to take place. Now, a lot of us, and I don't know, what your upbringing was out there, but some of us, how do we handle these situations? Because I could tell you, for me, growing up, a lot of it was gossiped. Gossip was a big deal in my house, and I hated it. And I don't mean my personal house. I guess I mean the extended family. We'll talk about gossip in a bit. But some people, I won't mention any people, but some families ignore the situation, pretend like nothing's happening, and teach your kids, if you're upset, just deal with it. It's going to be fine. Just deal with it. So that's the question I have for how are you and your spouse together communicating with each other on how to deal with difficult situations at home?
With Gabriella's situation, I just think about her happiness. That's my main concern. If she's having a great time and she's adapting and she's doing what she loves to do, that's my main concern. Other than that, I mean, I want her to be happy. That's first and foremost. And obviously I miss her for the next 6 weeks, but I know she's having a great time. And she was, all 4 years in college, she commuted from home, and it was really great. I read all of her papers. It was a great 4 years. She had a great time. She enjoyed, she grew up, and she just has blossomed into an amazing person. And going to camp for the next 6 weeks or maybe 8 weeks for the whole summer, we're not sure. It's fluid. She may stay for a second term. She may not. As long as she's having a great time and she's doing what she enjoys, that's the most important thing we want as parents. Mm-hmm. We've given her the tools to equip her to make those decisions, those tough decisions, and she can make a decision now. That's what parenting is all about. And, when she comes back home, I can't wait till she gets back home. The home is here for her. And she wants to stay home. She loves the house. And that's the kind of environment that you want as a parent, to make it safe for them and for them to really thrive. For us, it was tough in the beginning when she went to college because she was part of the family, but she wasn't, right? Because she was already mature. Is she going to be doing chores? Do we leave her alone? Like, does she have a curfew? And the other kids were like, this is not fair. I'm like, dude, you're 9 years old. Okay. Life ain't fair. Okay. I look at a pizza, I get fat. Okay. Life ain't fair. That's just the way it is. So she's 9 going, well, Gabby's not cleaning the tables. And we gave her space. And, it was great that we did that. And I think our relationship grew with that. And then, at the end of 4 years, the fact that she is going away and she's torn apart, and when she comes home, she's going to come home and be reacclimated into the family. That's what we're striving for.
But how are we guiding the family and in this situation, our children, into how to deal with this? Because it's hard on them too. And maybe they don't voice their thoughts because they're not sure what to think about certain things. And this doesn't mean, all you listening, it doesn't mean a kid going to college. It could be a loss of family member. It could be anything where it's just difficult for kids and they don't know how to communicate that.
That's a good question. How? Being open for us, when we look at it, we have certain things that we do all the time. So we're always together with the kids. We're always at nighttime watching TV with them. We're up in the morning with them, hanging out. We have 3 meals a day with the kids. They come to our work. So they're fully integrated into our lives. Not having Gabriella there, it's a little bit different for us. But the kids know that if something's bothering them, they can always come and talk to us.
Well, it's important though that they know that, but how do they know that? And that's sometimes that we forget to let them know that. Hey, I know our kids aren't listening, but I could tell you that Veronica, so she's 12, she cried quite a lot afterwards because she's very emotional. And I know that about her. She's very sentimental. And I know that about her. And so when you have one of the children different than the other like that, you really have to treat them differently. I actually had to sit with her for quite a while and just listen to her. And she really didn't say much. And that was okay. And so most of the time our reaction is, I want to fix you. I want to take care of you. I don't want you to feel that way, and you try to just make it better for them, but they have to go through this. And that's important because that's how they're growing and learning. So when they get to be an adult, they're going to take what they learned from you and bring it into their family or into their future. And that's really we don't realize the impact we have on our kids. We really don't. But when we look back at our childhood, we're aware of it. So I want you to pay attention to your children and say, wow, I have a huge impact. What can I be doing differently now? How can I be communicating with them a little bit more? How could I be opening a conversation maybe that needs to be had? Maybe now is that time that we could think about that because it's really important. One of the things I think is helpful is to talk about the situation in a positive way. If me and my husband was sitting there sad about something, probably the kids are going to learn to do that. But if we're laughing and joking and remembering something funny that happened with that person that we're upset about, it's easier for them to remember that and to start doing that as well. I think that's very helpful. And also the biggest thing too, as a parent, it's really a challenge is to listen to your kids, to just be able to ask them a question and sit back and listen, because they have a lot to say that maybe they're afraid to say because we always try to give them the answer, but just hear them out.
Hey, maybe you should take that advice from me though, huh?
Well, what do you mean?
Yeah. There's 2 observations. There are 2 observations, everybody. The first observation, this is talking from experience. Blondes are always going to give you the problem. The blondes are always the emotional tough ones, right? Talking from experience.
I have to tell you, when Veronica, she's our 4th child, when she was born, my brother looked at her, saw her beautiful platinum blonde hair and said, oh boy.
6 weeks. Couldn't leave the house for 6 weeks. Couldn't strap her.
Nothing. That was nothing.
Yeah, that was nothing. For you, it was nothing.
She's a challenge, and I like challenges. So that's why she was given to us.
And the second observation that I've seen throughout my life as a parent, man, I'm able to ask for forgiveness for my kids. 10 or 15 years ago, like I ain't saying sorry to them. I'm not going to be the weak person. I didn't do anything wrong. But actually the other night I got mad at one of my daughters, and hey, you get enraged. We all do that. It's like you could be the nice guy. And the great thing is seeing your spouse say, hey, don't yell at them. And 5 minutes later, she's yelling at them. So I'm like, the vindication is there. We all lose it, right? And she's laughing because that's exactly what happened.
I think having a sense of humor is the best way to have a great marriage.
So
100%.
This is what you need to happen. You're going to have to say sorry to your kids because you mess up. And the fact that I actually went, before I went to bed with her, I was so mad at her. I mean, just stop turning around for me and tell me what's wrong and stop storming away. And you guys, everyone listening to this is probably saying, yep, that's in my household. It's in everyone's household, but they're young and they're going to grow out of it. But we get caught up. And, Julia will say, don't you remember this one? She did it all the time. I don't remember it anymore, but let them grow out of it. It's a phase. But when you make a mistake, make sure you're big enough and you're man enough or woman enough to say, I'm sorry, Cecilia, I really didn't mean to yell at you. It came off the wrong way. Please forgive me. And that goes a long way because they'll learn how to ask for forgiveness as they get older. And when they make mistakes to you, then they'll say sorry to you. So that to me has been profound. I could not do that. I didn't even know what that was all about, especially when they're little, 3, 4, 5 years old. You say things and you do things, you yell at them. Well, first of all, why are you yelling at a 4-year-old child? That's just like, if you really stop and think at it, you don't yell at a coworker or an adult.
We yell at them because we're frustrated. We don't know what to do.
Exactly. I know, but you're not conscious of that, but at least understand that that's why you're yelling. Then you can say, hey, sorry, Julia, I'm sorry for yelling at you. I was just frustrated. I got caught up in the moment. Didn't know what overtook me. So that's really important. Balloons are a problem and forgiveness. Ask for forgiveness. And the funny thing is she's not even refuting it, my wife. So she's like, yeah, he's right.
I already know that. And I'm okay with it. I'm okay with it. I've come to
the realization.
Understand that that's true.
Okay.
And all you blondes out there that are not like that, I believe you. So there's another thing, Gino, like it kind of goes with in the same, what we're talking about now is, if there's conflict in the family, how were you brought up how to deal with conflict, whether it's a family fight, family feud, that type of thing. I talked about it a little bit in the beginning, because that makes a difference. Like I said, you get married and you're bringing both families into the marriage. So I have my mom's side, my dad's side, you do as well. And how they both handled situations is how you learned how to deal with things. And now we are both coming together with 4 ways of handling things. And it can be a challenge at times because most of the time we really don't know how to deal with it. But we're creating our children's view on how to deal with things. And I think it's so important. This should be a conversation. Maybe, we actually have never really had this conversation until now, is how do we deal with a family argument, or, you know what I mean? Because the kids need to be taught how to handle it.
So what's the question? The question to all the listeners is, how do you deal with conflict or family arguments? And
how do you deal with it? But what aren't you happy about? Because a lot of times we just take the way our mom taught us or dad taught us, and we're just like, all right, well, that's what I learned. And we leave it at that. But what if you're not happy with that? What if you don't agree with it? You're an adult now. You have a new view on it. You've seen other people handle things differently that you admire. You can leave certain things and adapt certain new ways. You can do that. And that's something to discuss. Don't you think?
Yeah. I mean, for me, usually I would avoid the conflict, right? That's what our families did. We just avoid the conflict, and that's not really a good way to do it, because then all of a sudden it builds up, it builds up, it builds up. And then all of a sudden, so for me, I just never liked the drama. I never liked people, discussing things and, that all that.
Uncomfortableness.
Yeah. And so for me, just what's the root problem? What's wrong? Life is too short to be arguing about these stupid things. And for me, unfortunately, I just like to cut people out of my life if that's the way it's going to be. And my life is too busy as it is. And I can't worry about these little things in life. Maybe that's not the right way to do it. I'm talking about cousins who are far removed. I'm not talking about the inner circle of family. It's brothers or first cousins and all. You have to deal with that. And you have to really talk about that conflict resolution and get it out there. But man, life is too short to be arguing. And
yeah. I mean, I was raised, like I said in the beginning, there was a lot of gossip going on. So we knew every situation in the extended family. And I'm going to be honest, I don't know if it was just me and the whole family. I hated gossip. I just saw the destruction it caused in family. And, there's something different between venting and gossiping. And when we're venting, we're actually asking that person to just hear us out. We're struggling with this person. But we're not destroying their character. And I think that's the important part, is that you are allowed to, because I do know families too, that, like my husband said, just avoid conflict completely because you don't want to talk bad about the person, but you're having an issue with them. And so that to me is not okay either. It's important to talk about a situation with someone that you trust, maybe that isn't very gossiping.
That's why coaching is important.
Yeah.
To be honest,
I agree with you. And that's what I
I'm
realized.
not trying to get anybody over to
No.
life coaching or business coaching, whatever.
Right.
But when you're coaching with somebody, they have no skin in the game.
Yeah.
They can look at the problem and go, Gino, are you an idiot? I mean, basically, what are you doing? You know, I see it this way. They have they're not rooting for anybody. They should be detached. They should be empathetic toward the situation. And if you tell them all the facts, it's not like they're going to tell you what to do. That's not what coaches do, life coaches especially. They're just going to lay out the facts and keep asking you questions.
Yeah.
And then ultimately, you know what you need to do. And maybe they're going to hold you accountable. Oh, before you get on the next call, Julia, make sure you go talk to your cousin about that situation. Right. And you'll end up doing it. Whereas if we're left to our own devices, or we go talk to mom and we give mom our side of the story, well, what good is that going to do? Right. Because it's already slanted and mom already has their favorites and it's not going to come out right. So honestly, and maybe sometimes you can't talk to friends either because friends are like you more than that other person. So you're not going to get an objective, viewpoint, objective. So I would definitely, if you're having problems like that, go out there and find somebody who you can speak to that's detached from the situation.
And this too, it goes down to the kids. Like Gino and I were talking about before this podcast. It could be a generational change in your family, because, you think about even when your grandparents' day, it wasn't that long ago and they're no longer with us. And now here we are teaching our children the same ways if we want that. But if we want to change it, we can, but we have to put the effort into it and we have to teach the kids. Maybe it's a better way. I don't know. It's everyone's family is a little bit different, but don't be afraid to try something. If you know something isn't right and you don't like the way you approach a situation and you're just doing it because that's what you were taught, maybe it's time to just maybe seek out some other new way. Do you know what I mean?
What's the next question?
I don't know. I gave you the whole questions there. Am I interviewing you?
You're interviewing me. Yes.
Well, I want to know your view, not about you, but how you think the kids should learn how to handle even sibling rivalry, because it's funny that, one of the, I don't know, the most things that I think about, even when the kids grow up, is my worry is, what if they grow apart and they have a disagreement and then they no longer talk and time goes by? We all have people in our lives that are like that, my husband even mentioned sometimes he doesn't know what to do, so he cuts people out. I don't agree with that at all. And the last thing that I would want was my kids to do that, especially to each other. And so for me, I could tell you, and then you can answer it. We've had that in our family and my kids know about it in our extended family. And I will just talk openly about, why not just discuss something, get it out. Here's what I'm thinking. Listen to the person, just like we talk about all the time on podcasts, because there's nothing more important. I mean, family is so important. And why would you ever want to lose that? And we teach them the importance of communication and contact with each other. And that's something that I teach them. Is that what you would agree with?
So it comes down to forgiveness. If you can forgive somebody, I mean, you can forgive, but don't forget. That's important. And my mother-in-law had mentioned this quote, or this saying that she said, justifiable anger. You can be justifiably angry. You can be angry, and but I think if you just forgive somebody, it's just like a weight off your shoulders. But you don't have to forget, and you have to be careful. You don't get bullied or don't get pressured into doing something that's not right. That's not what I'm talking about here. People do make mistakes, and if if you want to forgive them, you can forgive them and move on with your life. It's a tough one. I mean, it's part of the ego, right? Because it's always about us wanting to be right and us wanting to be smarter. And that's not what it comes down to with family. It shouldn't come out with anybody, but who cares if that person is right? Or, it's someone who's you're supposed to be in your corner, right?
Well, the forgiveness part is a challenge in itself, because you're forgiving someone, but you're not saying what you did was okay. You're saying what you did was not okay, but I'm going to forgive you,
Mhm.
and we're going to move past it. I'm not going to let you do that again. That's
Mhm.
really what forgiveness is. And I think that's a lot of people take forgiveness as a weak type of decision people make to make things okay, that, like, I'll pretend like nothing happened. And that's not true. And that's important to communicate. And that's why we talk about communication is so important in every relationship in our lives, because, the kids learn, because I'm home all the time with them. They learn that if they make a mistake, yes, you need to forgive them, but you don't let them take advantage of you, or don't let them be mean to you, or all those things. Even my, she's a teenager, one of our daughters, and she was having an issue with a friend, and the friend wasn't so nice to her. I'll just say that. And she allowed it to happen because she wanted the friendship. And finally, she came to me and told me that, maybe she was having issues. Maybe it was a jealousy thing. You know how girls are, teen girls are. And I said, do you value that friendship where you're letting her be mean to you? Are you doing her a disservice by allowing that? Because she should treat you better. And so she finally approached her, and they had a conversation, and it was a little awkward at first because that person didn't want to talk to her anymore. But eventually she came around, and it was a better relationship because my daughter, didn't allow her to act like that anymore. And it was actually really beneficial for that other person. And that's what I mean. We're doing a disservice by letting people treat us a certain way. And we're teaching our children that. So that's such an important lesson.
Let's take a quick time out to hear from our sponsors. So, Julia, you had asked the question at the beginning, and I want to reflect back upon that. Everyone listening out there, how has your life changed since you first met? Now, let's be honest. You've gotten better in certain areas,
Mm-hmm.
and you've probably gotten worse in certain areas.
Mhm.
So let's be honest. I'm trying to think of anywhere I've gotten worse. I mean, I don't know. That's a tough one because I was really bad. So, I mean, there's not much I could do worse. So, but
Well, I think in general, we're very selfish,
Yes,
because
yeah.
we're on our own and everything's about us.
Yes, that's a hard one when you're young. I mean, that's the thing. So really reflect upon that as you go throughout the day and go throughout the week. Where can I get better? We can always get better in every aspect, but see and give yourself credit for getting better, from the very beginning to where you are today. That's important. We beat ourselves up to where we are now,
Mhm.
but I can look back a few years and go, wow, I wasn't where I am now. And I still have room for improvement, right? But at least let me enjoy where I've gotten to at this point.
Yeah, we all grow. I mean, we all make mistakes, and that's how we grow even further. So I think, embrace those mistakes. Don't hide from them, because we've learned so much by being parents and being married and making really ridiculous. Sometimes it's just like, I just want to hide my face, like some of the things we've done. But another question, I have is, how are we as a couple, as a family, being a good influence in other lives, in other people outside our family? Because that's also a big deal that we sometimes we just focus on. Remember, you were talking about in the beginning about that Hollywood star just thinking about themselves, and how you started Jake and Gino and you want to help other people. But how is the family aspect? How are we making a difference in other people's lives in that sense? And all of you out there listening, that you're supposed to be doing that as well. It doesn't mean that we have a podcast and, I'm talking just like basic stuff.
So for me, your words are powerful. Don't be that guy out there who's like, gets married, and after 6 years of marriage, he's like, making fun of marriage and that kind of stuff. Don't do that, because if you feel like that, then you shouldn't be married, right? That's the way I look at it. And it's the same thing with kids. When you speak about your family, there are tough times, but for us, it's great. Every time I speak about my kids and my family, I speak in glowing terms. It might not have been like that for always, but in the last decade or so, I never say anything because there's nothing negative to say. It's been an amazing experience for me. So, always highlight that. Always make sure you talk in positive ways. Always talk really well about your spouse. Several years ago, there were times when, I don't know if I felt threatened, but I would just, make fun of my wife every now and again. And she got really insulted by that, but I wasn't doing it in a bad way. So just be careful of how you talk about your spouse. Now that I can joke about her being blonde and all, that's a different, but really watch your words and be the role model that of the family. If you're the man of the family, if you want to lead the family, then be the role model. Be there for your kids. Listen to them. Be present. don't always be dictating what to do, right? Like my wife said, listening is probably the hardest thing for a young parent, or even an older parent. If you've never done it before, it's a really difficult skill. Sometimes just sit down on the couch and don't say anything and just nod your head. They'll be like, what's wrong with dad? Why is he listening to me? Just do that. It'll freak them out.
That is the most challenging thing I've ever done in my life. And I have to confess that I had 4 kids before I did that. And I'm sure I said this before, but it's worth repeating, is that I remember calling my brother and saying, this is so ridiculously hard. I'm so exhausted at the end of 5 days of doing just that. Is just, instead of telling all the kids what to do, okay, it's time for this. This is what you're going to eat. This, I'm just, you know what I mean? Making commands instead of just asking them a question and let them answer in their own, everyone was a different age and they all had different ways of answering. But it is, wow, when you're not used to it, it is exhausting mentally, but you do get used to it. And so if you're just starting out, just start and continue it. Yes, it's exhausting, but it does get easier, I promise. And it is so worth it, because your connection with your children, with your husband, with your spouse, even with your mom or your dad, whoever you are, whatever relationship you are trying to connect, it really, wow, it is amazing. It really is. I just encourage you all to start listening a little bit more. A lot of the times when I do life coaching, sometimes I give people the hugest of challenge. I mean, it's just so big and they love it, some people, but some people just need a small little step. Just give me one little thing that I could do for the week or for the 2 weeks. And it's just that. Listen a little bit more. And maybe next week you can listen a little bit more.
And the listening aspect, I'm going to bring real estate into it, or any business, or being a leader. You need to listen, because as parents, we think we know it all. And, as you get older, you get wiser, but sometimes we don't know what's going on. Sometimes we have that energy block of interpretation where we're interpreting something and that's not really what's going on. So listening is important, and it is tiring, but just remember, sometimes there are appropriate times where you need to tell your children to do something, whether it's for their safety, right, or, you know what, I'm sorry, I don't want to play tennis. Well, guess what? You're going to play tennis. I don't want to do piano lessons today. Guess what? You're doing piano lessons today.
You got a little taste of our house.
Yes. It's hard. Or guess what? I don't feel like reading today. Yeah. Guess what? You're reading today. There's certain times when you just don't want to listen. You don't have to listen. But there are other times where, Dad, you know what? I can't play tennis today because I pulled my hamstring. I'm really tired. I just can't deal with the heat, or whatever that may be. Just, you have to listen. But there are times, and I'm reading Dr. Gary Chapman's book, the gentleman who wrote the 5 Love Languages, and children have them too. All the children just respond in a certain way. Some love to be, touched. Some have that feeling of just being listened into, and some like you to do things for them. So find out what your child responds to, and start talking to them and having dialogue to them in that language. And I loved what Dr. Chapman says in the book. He says, just sometimes you have to tell kids what to do. It's okay. I mean, you have to be their friends, but sometimes you have to be the authority figure, and they need discipline and they need structure. So don't ever forget that. And a child with structure and with discipline, when they grow up, guess what? They'll have the discipline and the structure. Yeah,
there has to be a balance for sure. And I think sometimes we are just one extreme or the other. And so maybe a challenge, and for me, it was a challenge, maybe it is for you as well, is to somehow interlace those two. And so now you're doing both within, in the same conversation. And that's really a challenge, but it's very beneficial. So
I'm going to Webster's dictionary. I want to know what the word interlace means.
Interlace, isn't that something?
I think it's intertwined.
Sometimes maybe. I think I make up words.
I think you just make up a word.
And nobody really questions me. I saw your hand.
I'm going to question you.
Okay.
I saw the fingers go
together.
It
should be a word, interlace. Okay, interlace. Don't you tie you interlace your shoes?
No, you don't interlace your shoes.
I think it should be.
We're in trouble, people, because we
it's all good.
Kids,
I teach my kids English.
Graduated college.
I have to tell you that most of the time, eventually, these words get into the dictionary. Like my biggest surprise was, what's that word? Ginormous. And I remember hearing someone use it and I thought, that's not a word. Oh, it's now in the dictionary. So now we're allowed to use it because it's in the dictionary. Okay. However it works. I'm just happy.
Any other questions?
Yeah. No, I just want to sum up. And I really wanted, I would love for all the listeners to just take a little while, talk to your spouse, or, even if it's just you thinking about this, how you're raising your family to deal with certain situations, how you were raised, how your spouse was raised, what things that you want to leave behind and what things you want to gain. You don't have to take all the ways that you were taught. If you ignore situations, your kids are going to learn that. Is that what you want for them? It's a good time to think about this because they are our next generation. And it's so important that we guide them on the right path because they are our future and they're the next generation. I think it's important.
So I'm going to interlace this
Thank you.
podcast
I think everyone's going to start using this word.
by giving a recap of my wife's journey on her life. You ready?
I don't know.
I'm trying to formulate the whole thing in my mind, and my mind is
I
racing.
think there's too much.
Going,
I think you know too much about me.
No,
Yeah.
I could just start off by saying that high school, going to school with your sister and your brother, she'd rather stay home and clean the house than go to school. She was always a hard worker. She had 2 jobs. I met her at the restaurant, quiet, reserved. And then when we started dating, it was really cool, a lot of fun. We're really selfish. She really wasn't one of those, I don't say risk takers. She'd rather hang out at home. Meanwhile, I can't stay still for 5 minutes. It's really an irony that God put us together. It's like, what are we doing today? She's like, I'm just going to sit by the couch in my pajamas. I'm like, I'm ready to go fishing. I'm ready to do something here.
Wait, I say that now?
Yeah, you still don't.
Well, I don't like to sit with my pajamas. I like to clean. I like to reorganize.
But what I'm saying,
sorry, I interrupted you.
But I'm saying, the whole interlacing is gone. So, having the one child and then the second child, and then thinking that, by the child number 3, we're overwhelmed and there's just so much going on. And are we doing the right thing? Are we homeschooling properly? Are we spending enough time? And then child number 4 comes along and, the family's growing, the dynamic is growing. It's a lot of fun, but there's so many new things going on. And by child number 5, it's been an amazing journey. And we're saying to ourselves, do we want to leave New York or do we want to stay here? And that was the big journey with that and the struggle, because all of our family, all of our friends are up there, and we make the decision to come down here. We had our 6th child up in New York, and then we moved a couple of years after that. And it's been an amazing journey. It's been a really, really cool journey for the both of us. I think we've had a lot of personal growth. I think that we've had a profound impact on our children. That's what we want. We want to leave a legacy for our kids. We want to be role models for our kids. I want my kids to look at mom and dad and say, they're really cool parents. They really love us. They really will do anything for us. I can pick up the phone at 3:00 in the morning and give them a call. They're always driving us everywhere. They'll go out of their way to do anything for us. And that's what I think we want as parents, to be their role models. I don't want my kids to turn on the TV and have their role models be on TV playing a sport, or I want them to look at me and say, I am their role model. So I think that's what Julia has achieved in the last 20 years. And the other thing is, the amazing part, even though she was selfish, let's say this is a woman who's homeschooled for over 20 years. She was breastfeeding for like the last 18 of the 20 years, right? So it's constantly giving of herself, and talk about her body going into depletion. I mean, like, she's like, her body's like one of a 70-year-old. She's always worried about these aches and pains. But when you homeschool and you breastfeed for 20 years, that's what happens. And you have 6 childbirths. That's what ends up happening. But that's what we do as parents, right? And so you're thinking about yourself, and that's the great part about it, man. You have a living legacy where you've created an amazing family. And that's what I want all the listeners to do, is just to reflect upon what's really important to them. And family is really important, and having those amazing kids is really important, and letting them grow up and letting them see you as the role model and giving them. And then all of a sudden, when you get older and they go out of the house, you've done that, right? With the help of God and with the help of your spouse, but you've been able to do something like that. And that's something that will carry on for generations.
Yeah. And just to simplify, the kids literally, and our spouses and all those, they just want to be loved. And I think that's just important to simplify it, because sometimes it just feels so complicated and we don't know what to do. And it's just that easy. We just need to love our children and let them know that they're loved, because a lot of kids out there are not, or they don't know it. And that's where issues come along. So just let your children and your spouse, let them know that they're loved by you. That's really important.
And let them feel significant. Yeah. Love and significance is really important. Guys, what I want you to do down below, if you have any questions or comments, I'd love to hear them. If you love the show, go on iTunes and leave us a review. We'd really appreciate that. And if you have any questions, just reach out to Julia Our email address is juliabarbaro@gmail.com.
Yes, I would love comments. I would love, what you want to hear on this podcast, because that means a lot to me. So
Thanks, everyone.
thank you.